I'm Sabrina Ward, 29 years old. I stepped into my mother's birthday gathering carrying hope. Hope for warmth. Maybe even a chance to finally heal the wounds that had scarred our family for years. But instead of compassion, I was hit with something far more brutal than a slap. It came in the form of words sharp and cutting, designed to shatter me. My father rose to his feet, his voice cold as ice and weighted with finality, echoing through the crowded room. I don't want you or that unwanted child in this family. You're dead to me and erased from the will. The room went still. Silence hung heavy as every pair of eyes locked on me. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I simply stared back, my chest pounding like a drum, and I made a choice. Without uttering a word, I placed my gift on the table and walked out of the party. An hour later, my phone buzzed with call after call. The very people who had cast me out now sounded panicked, their voices shaking, pleading with me to return. But I didn't. I answered just once, and with 2 short words, I ended it. Too late. In that instant, I understood something vital. I was no longer the fragile one, no longer the daughter they believed they could crush. Leaving wasn't surrender. It was freedom. It was finally choosing myself over their cruelty. If your own family pushed you aside in front of everyone, what would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your story. 2 years earlier, my life in Salt Lake City brimmed with promise. I was 27, thriving as an event planner, orchestrating weddings and galas with a gift for shaping chaos into elegance. My days hummed with vendor calls, venue walkthroughs, and client meetings. But I thrived on the rush. One spring night at a charity fundraiser I had coordinated for a local food bank, I met Ethan. He was a freelance chef serving gourmet sliders with a quiet confidence that caught my eye. We bonded over a shared love of late-night jazz and terrible puns, trading stories until the event wrapped up. By the end of the evening, he'd scribbled his number on a napkin, and I knew this was different. Ethan wasn't like the polished men my parents, Jeffrey, a retired lawyer, and Susan, who managed a small real estate office, had in mind for me. They had rigid expectations, a husband with a corner office, not a chef piecing together gigs. They never said it outright, but their tight smiles and pointed remarks about Ethan's career prospects spoke volumes. My younger sister, Lindsay, wasn't much better. At 24, she was chasing a freelance interior design dream, but still felt Ethan's path was unstable. Their judgment cut, but I brushed it aside. Ethan made me laugh, grounded me in ways they never could. What steadied me was the memory of my grandfather. He had passed when I was 16, but his lessons endured. He was self-made, starting as a carpenter before growing a small construction firm. He'd sit me on his knee, sharing stories of grit and independence, saying, "Sabrina, never let anyone decide your worth." One summer when I was 12, we built a birdhouse together in his backyard workshop. As we smoothed the wood, he hinted at a big gift for when I began my own family. "It'll be there when you need it most," he said, his eyes shining. I didn't push, assuming it was just another of his cryptic promises. But his words lingered, a quiet anchor in my heart. My parents, though, saw my decisions as defiance. When I brought Ethan to a family dinner 6 months after we met, the atmosphere was thick with tension. My father grilled him about his income, his plans, his so-called lack of stability. My mother chimed in, suggesting I meet her friend's son, a successful accountant. Lindsay smirked, muttering about how chefs never make it big. Ethan stayed composed, squeezing my hand under the table. But I saw the hurt flicker in his eyes. I defended him, saying he was building something real, just as I was. My father scoffed. "Real? You're throwing away your future." That night, staring at the ceiling, I replayed my grandfather's words. He had always believed in me, unlike my family's endless urge to control. His talk of a big gift carried new weight now, like a puzzle piece I couldn't yet place. I didn't know what it was, but deep down, I sensed my parents were concealing something from me. Ethan, unaware of their schemes, became my escape. We spent evenings cooking side by side, dreaming of a life free from their judgment. Over the next year, their disapproval only sharpened. My mother called Ethan a phase, urging me to aim higher. Lindsay texted me articles about stable careers, hinting Ethan wasn't enough. My father even suggested I move back home to reconsider my priorities. Their words stood in direct contrast to my grandfather's wisdom. He had taught me to carve my own way, to value heart over status. I clung to that even as their pressure built. Ethan and I had been together a year, and their disdain for his freelance chef career only deepened. My parents never missed an opportunity to criticize. At a family barbecue, my father cornered Ethan, his tone sharp, still chasing catering gigs. "You need a real plan," my mother added. "Sabrina deserves someone ambitious." Lindsay smirked, whispering to me, "He's fun, but he's not serious money." I pushed back, saying, "Ethan's building a life we love." Their eye rolls told me they didn't care. One October evening, Ethan transformed my world. In his cozy apartment over a dinner of his signature risotto, he dropped to one knee, holding a silver ring he had saved for months. "Sabrina, you're my everything," he said, eyes shining. "Will you marry me?" I nodded, tears spilling, and we spent the night planning a simple wedding, dreaming of a future free from their expectations. But sharing the news with my family was a hurdle I dreaded. I invited them to dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant, hoping to soften the blow. When I showed the ring, my mother's face soured. "This is reckless, Sabrina," she snapped. "He can't support a family." My father leaned in, his voice like ice. "You're wasting your potential on a dreamer." Lindsay scoffed. "You're choosing a nobody over security." I gripped Ethan's hand, my voice steady. "I choose him because he's real." Their silence cut deeper than their words. Their attacks didn't stop. My mother emailed me resumes of so-called better men, doctors, executives. My father called, warning I'd regret tying myself to a failure. Lindsay texted cruel jabs about Ethan's unstable income. I clung to my grandfather's lessons of independence, but their constant judgment rattled me, making me question if I could stand firm forever. Then a quiet morning shifted everything. A pregnancy test showed 2 lines. I told Ethan first, and his joy was electric, his arms wrapping me in a future we'd build together. We decided to keep it private for now, savoring the secret as we mapped our next steps. I hoped this might be the news to bridge the gap with my family, but I wasn't ready to tell them yet. Not after their venom. Days later, a chance encounter flipped my world again. I ran into Mr. Harold Grayson, my grandfather's lawyer, at a downtown cafe. He'd always been kind, but today his eyes carried concern. "Sabrina," he said carefully, "your grandfather left a trust for you, meant for when you start a family. Your parents control it, but they haven't been honest." My heart pounded. The big gift he'd mentioned when I was 12 wasn't just a story. "Why tell me now?" I asked. He frowned. "I've seen how they treat you. You deserve to know." I left the cafe, my mind spinning. I tested the waters with my mother, asking if she knew of any inheritance. She deflected, saying, "Don't chase old dreams." My father was curt. "Focus on your life, not fantasies." Lindsay's nervous laugh when I asked her confirmed my suspicions. They were hiding something. A trust, a fortune, maybe my future. I had no proof yet, but the pieces were fitting together. I wasn't just fighting for Ethan or our dreams anymore. I was fighting for what was mine. That morning, the truth about my grandfather's legacy altered everything. I sat across from Mr. Grayson in his austere Salt Lake City office, the weight of his words settling like a stone in my chest. "Your grandfather left you a trust fund, $1 million, he said, his tone firm but steady. "It activates when you have a child, but your parents have controlled it since his death." My breath caught, the memory of his promised gift flooding back. Not a childish fantasy, but a hidden truth. "Why tell me now?" I asked, my voice shaking. Mr. Grayson leaned forward, his gaze kind yet unwavering. "You're starting a family, Sabrina. It's your right to know what they've hidden from you." I left his office, my mind spinning with betrayal, fury, and a fierce determination to confront my parents that very night at my mother's birthday celebration. All afternoon, I wrestled with my emotions. The secret of my pregnancy, shared only with Ethan, felt like fragile hope against their relentless disapproval of our engagement. I wanted to believe that announcing our child might soften their hearts, mend the chasm between us. But Mr. Grayson's revelation had shifted something deeper. My parents weren't just rejecting Ethan. They were guarding a fortune meant for me, controlling my future. Back in my apartment, I prepared a small gift, a neatly wrapped package that carried my defiance. I wasn't sure I'd find the strength to leave it, but it felt like a step toward reclaiming my life. As dusk fell, Ethan and I arrived at my parents' sprawling estate, the backyard aglow with fairy lights draped across towering pines. Tables dressed in white linen bowed under silver trays of hors d'oeuvres and flutes of champagne. The air buzzed with the chatter of guests in sharp suits and glittering gowns. My mother stood at the center, radiant in a deep blue dress, her smile a polished mask as she accepted compliments. My father lingered nearby, his presence commanding attention, his stare sharpening the instant it landed on me. Lindsay wove through the crowd, her laughter bright but her eyes cold as they slid toward Ethan. His hand in mine was my anchor, his quiet strength steadying my racing pulse. The party glimmered with life, but tension coiled inside me. I waited for the right moment, my fingers brushing the gift in my purse, its weight a reminder of the line I was about to cross. During a lull, as the band paused and glasses stilled, I stepped onto a low platform, raising my flute. "I have an announcement," I said, my voice steady. Despite the knot in my throat, Ethan and I are expecting a baby. The words carried my hope, fragile yet defiant, into the night. The silence that followed was suffocating. My mother's smile froze, her eyes widening in shock before narrowing into something colder: disapproval. Lindsay's glass stopped midair, her lips curling into a sneer as she muttered to a guest. My father advanced, his face a storm of fury. "A child with that man!" he bellowed, his voice slicing through the crowd. "You're no longer my daughter. You're out of this family and the will." Gasps erupted, whispers rippling like wildfire. Ethan's grip tightened, his jaw set, but I held my ground. Their words were a blade I'd felt before but refused to let pierce me. Their rejection wasn't new, but its raw cruelty in front of everyone revealed their hunger for control. The trust fund, their lies, their grip over my future, it all clicked into place. My grandfather's lessons of strength surged within me, drowning out their venom. I wasn't just fighting for Ethan or our child. I was fighting for my legacy. My hand found the gift in my purse, a small velvet box wrapped with purpose. I had prepared it that afternoon, fueled by years of deceit, a silent declaration I couldn't keep buried. I moved toward the gift table, the crowd parting like a tide, their eyes heavy with judgment and curiosity. My father's glare burned into me, but I met it without flinching. I set the box down, its soft thud louder than the music in my ears. "Happy birthday, Mother," I said, my voice calm, edged with steel. The words were for me, a severance of their hold. I turned, took Ethan's arm, and walked out, the night air sharp against my skin. Each step fueled my resolve, a fire kindled by their betrayal and my grandfather's truth. As we reached the car, the glow of the party dimmed behind us, the murmur of voices resuming as if nothing had changed. But I had. The gift wasn't just a gesture. It was my stand, a promise to myself and my unborn child. I didn't know how they'd react when they opened it, but I knew I was ready for whatever came next. We drove into the darkness, my heart steady with the strength I'd only begun to claim. An hour after leaving, my phone erupted nonstop. The screen lit with missed calls and texts, my father's name flashing again and again. I ignored them, my fingers trembling as I gripped the steering wheel, the weight of the velvet box I'd left behind heavy in my mind. Ethan reached over, his hand steady on mine. "You did what you needed to," he murmured. But the storm was only beginning. Back at my parents' house, the party had unraveled. A neighbor, Mrs. Carter, later told me she'd seen my parents rush to the gift table moments after I walked out, their faces pale as they ripped open the velvet box. Inside lay my grandfather's heirloom ring, its gold gleaming under the fairy lights, and a folded letter in my handwriting. The note was short but cutting. I know about the trust fund, $1 million, and the $500,000 you've already taken. Their hands shook as they read, the crowd's chatter fading as their panic became impossible to hide. Mrs. Carter overheard my mother gasp. How did she find out? While my father muttered, "This can't get out." Their calls came rapid and panicked, my phone buzzing with my father's voice, his tone sliding from rage to desperation. "Sabrina, we need to speak," he begged in a voicemail. "This is just a misunderstanding." My mother's message was gentler, nearly weeping. "Please come home. We can fix this." I stared at the screen, their pleas empty against years of control and deceit. I typed one short answer to both, too late. Then I silenced my phone, my resolve turning to steel. Ethan looked at me, his eyes proud yet uneasy. "They'll strike back," he warned. I nodded, knowing he was right. The following morning, the blow landed. My best friend Kristen called at sunrise, her voice sharp with urgency. "Sabrina, you need to see this," she said, sending screenshots from a neighborhood group online. My parents had written a vicious post, painting me as a greedy, thankless daughter who'd betrayed them for cash. Sabrina demanded her grandfather's trust fund, rejecting her family, it read. My mother added a comment. "She has always been selfish, chasing fortune over loyalty." Lindsay piled on, calling me a disgrace who abandoned them. The post spread like wildfire, neighbors and strangers joining in with their own condemnations. How could she betray her parents? One sneered. "Spoiled brat." Another spat. I scrolled through the venom, my chest aching. Kristen's voice broke through my fog. "They're lying to protect themselves," she said. "Everyone at the party saw your father's outburst. They know he cut you off first." Mrs. Carter had apparently told neighbors about my parents' panic when they unwrapped the gift. Another guest, Mr. Thompson, told Kristen he'd watched my father shove the letter into his pocket, his face flushed with fury. The truth was dripping out, but the online assault pierced me, every word a new cut. I wanted to strike back, to reveal their theft of half the trust fund, but Ethan urged restraint. "They're burying themselves," he said, pulling me against him. "Let the truth handle it." Kristen agreed, vowing to watch the gossip and rally allies. She'd already texted several neighbors, reminding them of my parents' controlling ways, how they had pushed me to marry into status, how they dismissed Ethan's dreams. Her words were catching on, a faint countercurrent to their lies. By nightfall, the storm online had swelled. My parents doubled down, posting again about my betrayal and insisting I'd invented the trust fund claim to smear them. The irony seared. They were the ones who'd concealed my grandfather's legacy, draining $500,000 for themselves. I recalled Mr. Grayson's warning about their grip, and my letter's blunt charge felt like the first fracture in their facade. I didn't regret leaving it, though I hadn't expected such brutal retaliation. Sitting on our couch, I felt their treachery sink deeper. But with Ethan beside me and Kristen's fierce loyalty, I wasn't standing alone. The neighbors' murmurs, the witnesses from that party, the truth inside that letter, it was all mounting toward something I couldn't yet grasp. I wasn't the selfish daughter they claimed. I was fighting for my child, my future, and the inheritance they tried to erase. As I set my phone aside, a new strength rooted itself, bracing for whatever storm came next. 6 months later, my life had reshaped itself. Ava, our daughter, entered the world on a crisp March morning, her tiny cries filling our modest Salt Lake City apartment with a joy I had never known. Ethan stood at my side, his eyes alight with pride as he cradled her, whispering promises of the future we'd build. The sting of my family's betrayal, Jeffrey, Susan, and Lindsay, still lingered, their cruel social media barbs a raw scar. But in Ava's face, I found the reason to keep fighting, not just for us, but for the legacy they tried to steal. Ethan's family became our anchor. His mother, Diane, arrived with homemade casseroles, her warm embraces soothing the cold void my parents had left. His father, Robert, spent weekends repairing our wobbly furniture, his steady strength a reminder of what family should be. Daniel, Ethan's younger brother, filled the air with laughter, playing peekaboo with Ava and teasing us about our crowded nursery. Their love wrapped us in a safety I hadn't felt since my grandfather's days, giving me courage to face the war ahead. I had hired a lawyer, Ms. Barbara Clean, a sharp-eyed woman known for tackling the toughest battles. Kristen had recommended her, praising her grit after watching her win a case for a mutual friend. In her sleek downtown office, Barbara laid the facts bare about the trust fund. "Your parents took $500,000, she said, sliding papers across her desk. "The original $1 million was intended for you once you had a child, but they siphoned half under the guise of management fees. It's illegal." My stomach twisted, their greed exposed in stark black and white. Barbara's tone was unyielding. "We can sue to recover it, Sabrina." "It's your right." The decision weighed heavy. Suing my parents meant dragging our family's ugliness into court, laying bare their deception before everyone. But the trust was Ava's future, my grandfather's legacy to us, and I couldn't allow their theft to stand. Kristen, ever my anchor, sat across from me with coffee in hand, urging me on. "They've already smeared you online," she said, her gaze burning. "This is your chance to set the record straight." Ethan nodded, holding Ava close. "We're behind you no matter what," he said. Their faith steadied me, propelling me toward the choice I knew I had to make. A week later, Jeffrey made contact, not to me directly, but through Barbara. He rang her office, his voice dripping with indignation, insisting I was greedy for pursuing the trust. "Sabrina's tearing this family apart over money," he claimed, accusing me of betrayal and ingratitude. Barbara shut him down, her voice cold. "Your daughter is defending her child's future," she told him. "You broke the law, Mr. Allen. This isn't greed. It's justice." When she relayed it to me, I felt a rush of gratitude. Barbara wasn't only my attorney. She was my shield, cutting through their manipulation with the clarity I had struggled to find. The online barrage hadn't stopped. My parents and Lindsay kept posting, their words venomous, branding me as a selfish daughter inventing lies for gain. Yet neighbors who'd been at the party, Mrs. Carter and Mr. Thompson, began pushing back, sharing the truth of my father's outburst and the letter's revelation. Still, the damage lingered. My name was tangled in their fabrications, and I knew a lawsuit would stir the hornet's nest even more. But retreat wasn't an option. Ava deserved better, and so did I. Late one night, as Ava slept and Ethan tested recipes in the kitchen, I sat with Barbara's documents, the figures glaring up at me. $500,000 stolen, half of what my grandfather had intended for me. I thought of his stories, his conviction in standing tall against those who would take what's yours. This lawsuit wasn't just about money. It was about reclaiming my voice, my dignity after years under their control. I signed the papers, my hand steady, and phoned Barbara the next morning. "File it," I said, my voice firm. "I'm ready." Our life wasn't flawless, but it was ours. Ethan's catering venture was growing, Diane and Robert's support unshaken, and Daniel's silly visits kept us grounded. Kristen checked in daily, her updates on the community's shifting views a reminder that truth was slowly winning. The lawsuit loomed, a daunting step into a battle I hadn't sought but couldn't avoid. As I held Ava, her tiny hand gripping my finger, I felt a fire kindle. This was for her, for us, for the legacy my parents thought they could erase. 9 months after the party, I faced my parents in court. The Salt Lake City courtroom was frigid, its polished wood and stern air a sharp contrast to the chaos of my mother's birthday. I sat beside Barbara, her steady presence grounding me as I looked at Jeffrey and Susan across the aisle. Their faces were strained, their eyes avoiding mine, a far cry from the commanding figures who had cast me out. Lindsay sat just behind them, her expression unreadable. Ethan squeezed my hand beneath the table, his steady warmth reminding me of why I was there. For Ava, for our future, for the truth. Barbara had constructed an airtight case. She presented evidence of the trust, $1 million designated for me upon Ava's birth, and the $500,000 my parents had siphoned away. Bank records, emails, and Mr. Grayson's testimony exposed their theft, each document another nail in their defense. The judge, a stern woman with sharp eyes, listened as Barbara dismantled their excuse of management fees, exposing it as a flimsy cover for greed. Their lawyers faltered, offering hollow denials, but the truth was inescapable. When the gavel fell, the ruling was absolute. Jeffrey and Susan were ordered to repay the stolen $500,000 plus legal fees, a devastating financial blow. Yet the courtroom win was only half the story. Barbara had unearthed their social media posts, vicious lies, branding me greedy and ungrateful, and submitted them as evidence of defamation. The judge concurred, ordering the posts made public as proof of their malice. Within days, word rippled through Salt Lake City's tight-knit circles. Neighbors like Mrs. Carter and Mr. Thompson, who had witnessed the party, spread the court's findings, their whispers growing into a chorus. My parents' reputation, once polished by wealth and influence, crumbled. Invitations to galas evaporated and their charity board seats disappeared. Jeffrey's business partners grew distant, while Susan's social circle shrank to a few loyal holdouts. The fallout struck them hard. Kristen, ever watchful, sent me screenshots from forums where old acquaintances now branded my parents hypocrites, their lies laid bare by the verdict. They acted so superior, but they robbed their own daughter, one post read. Another neighbor wrote, "I saw Jeffrey's fury that night. Sabrina didn't deserve that." Public humiliation wasn't my aim, but it felt like justice, a reckoning for the pain they'd inflicted. Ethan and I watched the updates roll in, Ava sleeping soundly in her crib, oblivious to the storm her very existence had set off. Then came Lindsay's letter. It arrived at our apartment, her handwriting unsteady on the envelope. "Sabrina," it began, "I'm sorry for everything. I was wrong to join their attacks. I want to meet Ava to be her aunt." Her words were gentle, a plea for forgiveness, but they rang hollow. I recalled her sneers at the party, the vicious remarks online, her silence when I needed a sister most. I handed the letter to Ethan, who scowled. "She's only apologizing because they lost," he said. Kristen over coffee was sharper. "She's just covering herself now that they're exposed." Their words mirrored what I already felt. I wasn't ready to forgive. Not after the betrayal. I met Lindsay in a quiet cafe, Ava in my arms as a reminder of what truly mattered. She appeared smaller, her usual poise stripped away, her eyes begging as she spoke. "I never knew they stole the money," she whispered, voice trembling. "Please let me stay in your life." I inhaled slowly, my resolve firm. "You chose their side, Lindsay," I said, my tone steady but cold. "You don't get to rewrite that now. Ava deserves more than a family willing to tear us apart." Her expression crumbled, but I felt no sorrow. This wasn't about revenge. It was about guarding my daughter, my peace. Walking away, I felt unburdened. The lawsuit had returned what belonged to me. Not only the money, but my voice, my strength. My parents' collapse wasn't my doing. They had built their ruin with lies and greed. Diane and Robert, Ethan's parents, welcomed us home with open arms. Daniel played with Ava while we shared the news. Barbara called later, confirming the funds would soon be secured to guarantee Ava's future. Kristen texted, "You did it. They can't hurt you now." As I held Ava, her sweet laughter filling our home, I knew I had chosen correctly. The past was over, and my family, Ethan, Ava, and those who truly stood beside us, was all I needed. A year after the trial, my life was everything I had fought for. The house came first. It wasn't lavish, but it was ours, a 2-story brick home in a quiet Salt Lake City neighborhood. Wandering through the empty rooms with Ethan, I imagined Ava's giggles ringing down the hallway and sunlight spilling across the kitchen where he would cook. Signing those papers meant more than ownership. It meant freedom from the chains my parents once tried to bind me with. Ethan poured himself into a dream long postponed. With help from the restored trust, he launched Brooks Table, a downtown restaurant. His menu balanced comfort with elegance, each dish crafted with devotion. I watched him move in the open kitchen, sweat on his forehead, joy in his grin as critics applauded his vision, and patrons returned again and again. What Jeffrey had once dismissed as recklessness had blossomed into success. My career flourished alongside his. At the firm, I rose to senior manager, entrusted with events that drew national acclaim. Colleagues respected my ingenuity and endurance not as the daughter of anyone, but as Sabrina Allen in my own right. For the first time, I was defined not by family shadows, but by triumphs I had forged alone. Ava was at the heart of it all. By her first birthday, she wobbled across the living room, curls bouncing as she reached for Robert's handcrafted rocking horse or burst into giggles at Daniel's antics. Diane stocked our freezer with casseroles and our lives with warmth. The Brooks family wrapped us in a love I had never known, proving that real family is chosen through devotion, not forced by blood. Across town, Jeffrey and Susan dwindled into solitude. The judgment against them lingered. The social circles they once commanded shut them out. Invitations ceased. Charity boards moved on, and whispers of their deceit spread quietly but decisively. Lindsay remained close to them, though her outreach to me felt more like remorse than redemption. I never answered. Boundaries, I had learned, safeguard peace. There were times I questioned whether I should forgive, but I remembered the public cruelty, the theft, the years of control. Forgiveness without change is submission. Ava deserved far better than to grow up beneath the weight of their resentment. I chose instead to create a life where love was constant and trust unbroken. The lessons were clear. Prejudice corrodes. My parents' obsession with wealth and image blinded them to Ethan's value and nearly stole my chance at joy. Lies decay. Their theft of the trust fund didn't just rob me financially, it betrayed the very bond my grandfather wished to leave behind. Yet truth redeems. By holding firm to my principles, I learned happiness isn't handed down by a family name, but earned by living with integrity. Now, at dusk, Ethan and I sit on the porch watching Ava chase fireflies in the yard. We speak of the future, new recipes, new events, maybe a second restaurant one day. Sometimes he squeezes my hand and murmurs, "We made it." And I know he's right. My grandfather's promise was never just about money. It was about strength, about never letting others dictate my worth. I see his lesson in every smile from Ava, in every plate Ethan serves, in every step I take free of the past. Happiness, I've discovered, is built daily by choosing honesty over deceit, compassion over judgment, and courage over silence. That is the life I fought for, and that is the life I will defend.